Hey there, true believers. This is Chef Jack with my comic book roundup. I'm going to let you know what I think of all the issues that I've read this week. Now, just to let you know, I do things a little differently than Englentine. This is not a Marvel vs. DC review, but rather, I include every single issue I read. Marvel, DC, the Independents, all of it. With all that out of the way, let's get started, shall we? This week, I'm reviewing the following. Batgirl and the Birds of Prey, number 22. Despicable Deadpool, number 300. Domino, number 2. Eternity Girl, number 3. Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, number 44. The Immortal Men, number 2. Incredible Hulk, number 716. Justice League, No Justice, number 1. Maestros, number 6. New Superman and the Justice League of China, number 23. The New Mutants, Dead Souls, number 3. Oblivion Song, number 3. RoboCop Citizen's Arrest, number 2. Sleepless, number 6. Star Trek The Next Generation, Through the Mirror, number 2. Star Wars Darth Vader, number 16. Venom, number 1. The Wildstorm Michael Cray, number 7. World of Tanks Citadel, number 1. Xena Warrior Princess, number 4. And finally, X-Men Blue, number 27. An issue that gets a 1-star rating is unrelentingly horrible. These are the books that are not worth even looking at, much less buying and reading. World of Tanks Citadel, number 1. This title is both a standard war comic and a standard Garth Ennis comic. What that means is you should expect a lot of technical talk about tanks, technical talk about strategies used in World War II, ample profanity, and prolonged conversations about kinky sex with prostitutes. The art mixes cartoonish facial expressions and technically accurate drawings of vintage tanks. The writing is, well, formulaic, to be honest. I mean, if you're a history buff who gets off on tanks, or if you happen to be Garth Ennis, you're going to absolutely love this title. If you're anybody else, not so much. Issues that get 2 stars are bad, but there's usually 1 or 2 things that keep them from being the absolute worst. The Immortal Men, number 2. This issue is basically a big pile of mediocre. The basic concept of the title, a war between immortals that's shaken up by the sudden appearance of the first brand new immortal in centuries, has a lot of intriguing potential. But the way this issue is being executed, it's boring and it's unimaginative. The cast of characters seems to be a gallery of rejected 1990s anti-heroes. When it comes to the plot, Benjamin and Tinian seem to prefer to substitute explosions and fight scenes, and even a couple of classic Image comic-style pin-up poses for actual storytelling. And folks, let me tell you, there's a reason nobody in the world calls the 1990s Image comics a golden age of writing. It's disappointing because I know Tinian at least is capable of so much better. Now, we'll have to see if they can stop relying on old tired comic tropes from 20 years ago and find their own stride. RoboCop Citizen's Arrest, number 2. This title continues to walk a very unsteady line between satire and straightforward heroics. Specifically, this issue abandons the mob justice angle that was so prevalent in the first issue in order to play up OCP's over-the-top evilly evil of evilness. Now, that matches the satire found in the movies, but it doesn't mesh well with the straightforward, serious drama that has been building up until now. I can't tell what sort of comic this is supposed to be, and to be honest, I don't think the writers know either. And that's a bad thing. X-Men Blue, number 27. The Cry Havoc story arc still suffers from a lack of any actual X-Men, and it is never a good thing when the stars of a series are sidelined. The quote-unquote replacement X-Men, Magneto, Polaris, Havoc, Emma Frost, and Mother Vine, are beginning to feel like they're coming together as a team. Barely. But there's still a feeling that this book has stopped being about the X-Men entirely. It's become something different without warning, and even worse, without any need to do so. When I give an issue 3 stars, it means that while the book isn't bad, there's not a lot to actually recommend it either. This is not to say they're horrible, it's just they're average. They just sort of are. Despicable Deadpool number 300. This is Jerry Dugan's final issue as writer of Deadpool, and it's clear that the man is trying to go out with some sort of style. Unfortunately, he doesn't quite hit the mark. I'll be generous and say that while it might not be the best story in the long run, it absolutely doesn't contain everything the fans have been demanding. It does at least do one thing very well, and that is set up what's to come next by focusing on everything that came before. That said, it also feels a little bit stretched out over a page count that is excessive, and you can tell where the story's being padded. It's not a bad issue by any means, it really isn't, but it could have been so much more, and it just wasn't. Domino number 2. To be perfectly honest, I'm still trying to figure out just what Gail Simone is doing in this title. And by that I mean, you know, plot-wise. The one thing I did get was that the mysterious assailants that tossed Nina out of a window last issue aren't completely done with her, and that's pretty much all I got. This issue reads like a segue between the introduction of whatever comes next and not a complete issue. It's like this is like the first 8 paragraphs of a chapter. All that said, the art is fantastic, the action is fun, all the cameos are fun, but overall it's just it feels like it's not a complete issue. Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps number 44. This is hardly the most exciting issue of Green Lantern I've ever seen, I'll tell you that right up the front. It is functional, it gets done what it has to get done, it does move the plot along, and I will admit that it's written okay and the illustrations are okay, though Brandon Peterson is absolutely no Ethan Van Sciver. But that's the best I can call it. Okay. The excitement present in the last issue just isn't here. The entire thing feels flat and lifeless. It's like they got overtired on the last issue and then decided to take a nap for this one. I'm hoping that Venditti will be able to pick things up with the next issue. Incredible Hulk number 716. At its heart, this is your basic factory floor meat and potatoes Hulk comic. Some big punches are thrown, the power scale's increased, the battles on the page are really just a metaphor for the internal battle. You know, this is literally nothing that we haven't seen before or that we haven't seen done better. However, that doesn't mean the book isn't entertaining. It's a fun read. The fight sequences are great. The cameo by Thor makes some of the best pages this title's seen in a while. But it's just not new, it's not original, and it feels like it's not new and it's not original. I get the feeling that this is just a holding action while we're waiting for World War Hulk 2 to actually get up and go. And it's too bad because this should be an issue that stands on its own. And it doesn't. Oblivion Song number 3. There is a big and one might even say pressing problem with this issue. It's not the fact that it's dialogue heavy, though it is. It isn't the constant perspective shifts, though there are a lot of them. Now the biggest problem here is what is being said and told to the reader itself. The characters in this issue have become mouthpieces for the writers. They exist solely to espouse the writers' views rather than developing their own identities. It's an unnecessarily aggressive means to deliver exposition. There are definitely some things to like in this comic, don't get me wrong, but it's not the characters, because they're about as flat and cardboard as the monsters. It's just not something that I can overly recommend, while at the same time, I can't totally hate it either. Xena Warrior Princess number 4. This entire series is all about the relationship between Xena and Gabrielle. It is built on the relationship between Xena and Gabrielle. The problem with this issue is very simple. There isn't enough of the relationship between Xena and Gabrielle to speak of in it. Everything else is intact. The characterizations of our heroes are flawless. You can't help but read Xena's dialogue in Lucy Lawless's voice and Gabrielle's and Renee O'Connor's voice. Everything else is fine, but despite all this, the story is a long series of almost. Almost well done. Almost exciting. Almost engaging. Almost about what this series is supposed to be about. The issues I give 4 stars to are the good stuff. They may not be perfect, but in general, they're really well written, they're really well made, the art's good, the stories are interesting, and they're just a lot of fun. Eternity Girl number 3. This title is best described as what would happen if Jack Kirby and Neil Gaiman had a baby together. While it reads like a standard cosmic fantasy story, it's really a character study about our heroine, Caroline, who is slowly going utterly insane from the exposure to, well, everything that she's being exposed to. And of course, since the story's told from Caroline's perspective, we the reader are being prompted to come up to our own conclusions about what is going on. Given her ability to rewrite the universe on a whim, it's almost impossible to take anything in this comic as at face value, and yet we the reader are required to do just that. Isn't that just insanely meta, guys? Given where this issue ends, I wouldn't be surprised if the title just gets more and more meta as time goes on. This is just a bag of fun. Justice League No Justice number 1. This miniseries is, of course, the next big thing following on from the Metal event. The source wall which surrounds the universe has been breached, and in response, the Omega Titans are on their way to devour the universe. This issue wastes no time at all getting us into the story, and I mean that. Other events spend the first issue setting everything up, but this sets it all up on a page, page and a half maybe. And that's all the exposition you're going to get before the action ramps up. None of the characters get enough time on stage to really shine, and the story itself, while intriguing and holding huge potential, so far hasn't offered us anything utterly new. Basically, this story is, Fantastic Four 48, 49, and 50, but with a bigger cast and better special effects. But I'm looking forward to it anyway. I think we're about to be taken on a really fun roller coaster ride of an adventure. I just don't think this is going to be earth-shattering or mind-blowing. Maestro's number 6. While this comic is best experienced as a surprise, I want to tell you going in that this is a really gore-filled book. I'm talking blood on top of blood on top of blood, guys. And while things go from bad to worse in this story, it's because everything goes from bad to worse that it's incredibly hard to look away from the action. Characters are literally being torn to pieces as every bit of good luck is met by 2 pieces of bad. I mean, you'd think this sort of escalation would be impossible to maintain, but it becomes clear at the end that the artistic choices made in this issue are the perfect setup for the finale. This is an utterly vicious story to behold, and it's an absolute delight to read. If there's anything wrong with it, it's that sometimes it just goes way too over the top. Not that that's a horrible thing, but it could have been just a little toned down and still worked. New Superman and the Justice League of China number 23. This issue really embraces the fact that the series was renamed to include the Chinese Justice League. The story here feels like a classic League story, it really does. It's got a great mix of competing characters whose motives all build to an appropriately consequential set of decisions that not only lay down a foundation of the future plotting, but it tosses the old status quo right out the window. Dragon Son, the Aquaman of the team, is the standout in this particular issue. As a character, he's used very impressively, and the writers have managed to find a very exciting new take on the original Aquaman's outsider theme. I honestly get the feeling that this title is beginning to really hit its stride, and probably is just going to get better from here. Star Trek The Next Generation Through the Mirror number 2. The lead story of this comic suffers a bit from the fact that the Enterprise D crew is investigating a mystery that the readers already know the answers to. It survives only on the anticipation of the ultimate meeting between the crew and their mirror universe counterparts. Meanwhile, the second story is built on the strength of Emperor Spock as a character, and I gotta say, he is an amazingly strong character. So far, I'm having a lot of fun with this series, and I look forward to seeing what's coming. Star Wars Darth Vader number 16. This issue continues the story of Vader's hunt for the rogue Jedi through Mon Cala in order to crush their hopes of spreading the word of the Jedi Order. The story arc has had its struggles, but this particular installment has really hit it big with me. It's exciting and it's action-packed, while at the same time it serves to offer the readers the hope that these particular Jedi can fight to see another day. And the twist at the end definitely proves that while Darth Vader is a badass and while Palpatine is a true manipulative bastard, sometimes their arrogance gets in their own way and leads them to make some serious and ultimately exploitable mistakes. The Wildstorm, Michael Cray number 7. This issue split right down the middle between two fast-paced, dialogue-driven stories. Despite it being a dual narrative, the comic is a very quick read. In one story, you've got Cray's introduction to a few new characters whose narrative importance are gonna be revealed in the story as it continues. In the other story, John Constantine continues to work this plan of his that we haven't seen much of. The collision of worlds when the stories finally meet makes a much more surprising encounter than I expected, and I really want to see what's going to happen next. The issues that receive 5 stars are excellent. They stand head and shoulders over any of the other books that I've read this week. These are the ones that truly deserve your attention first. Batgirl and the Birds of Prey number 22. This is the final issue of Birds of Prey, and it's honestly, genuinely a perfect issue. It balances moments of absolute heartbreak with warmth, and it mixes in some really fun action scenes. And then, like a cherry added to the top of a perfect sundae, it ends on just the right note. The Benson sisters closed out the run with a love letter to their own characters, and it shows just how much they were into creating this series. I hope they do just as well now that they're moving to Green Arrow. New Mutants, Dead Souls number 3. For the first time ever, this title feels like it's firing on all cylinders. The team dynamic is just perfect, and it shows in all the writing and in all the action. The story's central mystery is revealed just enough to keep it interesting, while simultaneously deepening enough to keep us from thinking that we know everything about it. There are callbacks to the past that answer fan questions, but not too many to keep us, that it doesn't keep us guessing. All in all, this is the best issue of the Dead Souls title so far, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next. Sleepless number 6. When you're creating a story set in the high fantasy genre, it's easy to go really big really quickly. One of the greatest things about this particular series is its willingness to stay small. The tension in this book all comes to a head in a purposefully unsatisfactory fashion that allows the narrative and the artwork to concentrate on just being subtle. Sure, there are big moments in this issue. They're only as big as the characters and the careful world building needs them to be. This is not a Michael Bay explosion fest. This is an actual story, and it's fantastic. The series is definitely one of the best new titles to come out of Image Comics in a long time, and I can't suggest it enough. Venom number 1. I'll be honest, I was a bit skeptical about this title. I mean, why start over from number 1 again? And I was certainly expecting the same old fight the supervillains, struggle with the internal turmoil story. What I was not expecting was a Lovecraftian horror mystery that implies that the Venom-like symbiotes have been on Earth for a lot longer than we ever knew. This issue was a welcome change of pace. It was just perfect. The art was perfect. The writing just created just the right mood. The story never dragged. It never got tiring, and I cannot wait to see what's coming, because I don't think it's going to be anything that anybody is going to be able to predict. I think they're going off in a brand new direction with this, and given that this character was feeling kind of, I mean, we've seen it all, this direction is welcome. So there you have it, folks. My thoughts on this week's comic book haul. Let me know what you thought. Did you read these issues? Did you agree with me? Did you disagree with me about them? What did you think particularly? Let me know in the comments below. I look forward to talking to you. If you like what we're doing, go ahead and hit like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. I'll be doing this again in a week. And I want you to know it's good to be back. Thank you very, very much for watching.